back, y'all. Tony here with Urban Survival Craft. Today I thought I'd talk about the backbone of survival kits, and this will largely apply to all of them, whether it's a bug out bag or a get home bag or even just a wilderness survival kit. Our needs are largely the same, and we need to address these. In the lectures that I do at the various events that I do public speaking in, whether it's the HAP Summit or the Earth Health Fest or any of those, oftentimes I'm talking about survival and how we can use certain concepts to affect our survival. One of the most important concepts that I start off those lectures with is the concept that survival is largely the art of buying more time. And the way we do that is by asking ourselves two questions. The first one is going to be, what's going to kill me right now? And then the next one is, what's going to kill me next? And by addressing it in that fashion, I am guaranteeing that I am following the appropriate priority. The best tool that we found for this is the Survival Priorities Rule of Threes. And we've all heard this in one way or another. I'm going to use the classic version, although in our classes we use our own modified version of it. The classic version basically suggests that you have 3 minutes without air, and as you'll see shortly, it's actually oxygen. 3 hours without shelter in extreme environments. 3 days without water, and you'll also see that it's a lot less. 3 weeks without food, and that's another fallacy. And in our modified version, we add a little bit more on top of that. But that's the classic version of it, and that's what we're going to be addressing today. So it's important to note that what I'm going to be describing here are more conceptual than actual concrete items. I have some stuff to use as examples, but what you ultimately choose will be based on your own unique needs. What I'm trying to do here is bring in awareness so that you can start developing your own kit using these concepts. Now, stick with us to the end, because I'm going to give you a very valuable tool that's going to help you put this all together at the end once you understand what you really want to start putting into your kit. So we started off by saying 3 minutes without air, and I foreshadowed it by saying what we really mean is oxygen. And when I first say this, most people understand that, yeah, you lose oxygen in a number of ways. Drowning is a good example. So because skills are ultimately more important than tools, you should probably learn how to swim. And while you're at it, understand that CPR is one of those foundational skills that everybody should have. In fact, here's a kit that I keep on my keychain with a CPR mask so that I can be part of the solution when there's a problem. Understand that a lot of times your proximity to the event makes you the most likely person to respond to it and to give that person the best chance of survival. So swimming in South Florida is an essential skill. CPR, everybody should understand. And having equipment that will help you maintain oxygen in your body is extremely important. Now, in the urban environment, you can experience a whole lot of things. Chemical fires is a very dangerous one. In fact, any fire is a dangerous one. Anybody that went through all the fire training in school, the stop, drop, and roll, and the touch the doorknob before you open it, and all that stuff, understands how dangerous smoke can be. And fires are the most common disaster that any one of us could be in. So understanding that is very important. Another thing to concern ourselves with is allergies. If you're allergic if you have a known allergy, having something like an EpiPen might be very important to you. Having that as part of your survival kit is critical. Or at the very least, having something like Benadryl should be something worth considering. The one that escapes a lot of us, and we're trying to bring a lot of awareness to, and it's really becoming a thing, and I'm very proud of that, is bleeding. A lot of people do not realize that bleeding is one of the more preventable causes of death if you have the right training and the right equipment, and it's something that you should include in your toolbox. So part of my survival kits, all of them, include some sort of a trauma kit. And I separate the trauma kit from the first aid kit because the trauma kit is something I need to get to very quickly. And I'm not going to go ahead and break this down. We'll break it down in a future video. I want to keep this as brief as I can so that we don't go really, really long. So a good trauma kit with, at a minimum, a good tourniquet is probably a very smart thing to do. At a minimum, a tourniquet, but chest seals are great. Something for wound packing is great. Pressure dressings are great. All of those things are important and should be in the trauma portion of any survival kit. Okay. I mentioned first aid stuff, the EpiPen, the Benadryl, and that stuff. The EpiPen in particular can live in your trauma kit. I also keep aspirin in my trauma kit because of the possibility of heart attacks. But Benadryl can live in your first aid kit. Okay? Medical emergencies may very well be the prelude to the disaster that you're trying to survive. So being equipped for that is important, with a particular eye on managing bleeding, which is one of the more preventable causes of death. So step one is develop skills that will help keep oxygen in your body, things like swimming, CPR, and of course, trauma management. Now we have all types of stop the bleeding courses available. We offer training as well through our company. There's no excuses anymore. The information is available. At the very least, there's a ton of videos that you can see here on YouTube that will at least get you thinking in the right direction. In the future, we'll be making more videos of that nature. Okay, so 3 minutes without oxygen. We said 3 hours in extreme environments. And this is a tricky one. Most of the videos that I've seen are talking about cold weather. Where I live, heat injuries are a very real possibility. Okay? So being able to create a microclimate, create some shade is important. But I think I should say that shelter really starts with the clothes that you're wearing. That's super important. My office happens to be in Miami Beach. My business office happens to be in Miami Beach. And it used to be right in the infamous South Beach. And I would very often see European tourists parking really far away from the beach and walking to the beach in flip-flops and Speedos. And it doesn't seem like a big deal when it's first thing in the morning. But when you see them walking back, red like tomatoes, it's a scary thought because heat exhaustion and heat stroke is a very real possibility. And most of these people were carrying little more than a beer and the keys to their car. So even if you're going to the beach, having the ability to cover up is probably a smart move. In a survival kit, having some spare clothes that will help protect you from the environment, whether it's cold or hot, that's kind of important. Okay? So addressing that as part of your survival kit with the understanding that that is the first step in creating good shelter is a huge step in the right direction. Augmenting that with other things that might be important, like a good hat, or maybe gloves, change of underwears, change of socks. Those types of things will go a long way. In fact, I put up a video on bug-out bags and the bagless option. And I'll drop a link below to that one so you can see my thoughts on get-home scenarios and bug-outs. So at least the first stages of that. What we're talking about here will only augment the stuff that I spoke about in that video. So check it out. I'll drop the link below. So 3 hours, give or take, maybe. It really depends on the condition that you're starting off in. But I witnessed in the Central Florida Tactical Conference, I was teaching a seminar there, and we had a guy go down due to heat exhaustion. This was minutes into the training session. And this was in the early part of the day. So heat injuries can creep up on you when you least expect them. Being hydrated is huge, and we'll talk about that next. Being able to get yourself into some sort of a microclimate, shade, and cool off is very, very important because overheating is a very real thing. This is something that should be addressed as part of your survival kit. Okay? So whether it's a hat, or in some cases, I've known several people, particularly people that live in the Southwest, and I've even seen people that are hiking certain portions of the Florida Trail will carry a large umbrella so that they can create that shade. Might that be something useful in your bug out bag or your get home bag? Perhaps. I have a large umbrella because it happens to rain a lot here, but I could always use that in a pinch. That's a little food for thought. Beyond that, something like a good tarp or a poncho / tarp that could be used as a makeshift shelter, a lean-to or an A-frame, something like that might be a smart move. And something like this does not have a huge footprint in any kit. And here in Florida, this can save you a lot of trouble in a lot of ways, both as protection from the sun, but maybe protection from the rain. Next, we have 3 days without water. And 3 days without water is generous, and it's presuming a lot. It's presuming that you are not already partially dehydrated. It's also presuming that the weather and the temperature outside is moderate and that you're not doing a whole lot of physical activity. But let me tell you something. In an emergency situation, that's very unlikely. You're very likely to be exposed to the elements, and you're very likely to be putting in a lot of physical effort. In the days following Hurricane Andrew, a friend of mine who got himself a gig clearing debris because he had a pickup truck and a couple of chainsaws, he made a lot of money, but he also fell ill to heat exhaustion because of that exposure and because of the fluid situation. Okay? Consider that most people live in a chronic state of mild dehydration. Consider that most people don't get their first drink of water in until after they've had their morning coffee, and very likely after they've already gone to work or wherever their day begins. So if you're already mildly dehydrated and all of a sudden you're putting in a great deal of effort and you're exposed to the elements, you may not have those 3 days. Similarly, if you're topped off with your water and your temperature and environment is moderate, you may have more than 3 days. We saw the lady that survived 2 weeks with a bottle of Coca-Cola under the rubble of the Haitian earthquake about 11 years ago. So 3 days, understand that the rule of threes, they're using the number 3 as a rhetorical device, implying minutes, hours, days. Okay, but you want to, if you're going to err, you want to err in the side of caution and presuppose that you're not going to be in the best possible condition, which is why we started off talking about first aid. Okay? So, water. Having access to water, being able to process water, super important, and this should be part of every kit. When I go hiking in the backwoods of Florida, I don't carry a whole lot of water with me because I can process water and I have access to water and it's very much available. If there was any hesitation, like certain parts of the Florida Trail, the access to water may be a little bit more difficult. So for those types of situations, I will carry more water, but more often than not, what I do is I carry some sort of a water purification device. My preferred water purification device is the Pure2Go water purifiers, and this happens to be one of the straws. It works like just about any of the other survival straws, but this one has a unique capability in that it also purifies the water. So anything that would naturally make it through a filter, whether it's chemicals or viruses, this thing will take care of it. It also has the most generous flow rate out of any of the other ones that I've ever used. So it doesn't require a whole lot of sucking power to make this thing work, which is very nice. Okay, if you're dehydrated and you're hurting, the last thing you want to do is be putting a lot of effort to suck water through a straw. Very important. Now, water is such an important item that I generally like to back it up with some sort of a redundancy. In this case, I have a boilable container. a metal single-walled container is really nice. I use water bladders, but I've had them burst in the past, so I'd like to keep with me at least one canteen that's hard. And if I'm going to carry a hard canteen, why not carry one that I can boil water in? So, redundancies of important systems, very, very important. Okay, if fire is something that's important to me, I would carry a couple of lighters, maybe a ferro rod. Okay, you guys see the point there. Finally, it's been said 3 weeks without food, but what we're talking about when you say 3 weeks without food, you're talking about biological survival. We're not talking about being able to function well. The fact of the matter is, if you have no food available, but you're processing water and you're drinking water, at some point you're going to suffer from hyponatremia. Okay, the so-called water poisoning. What's happening is you're flushing out your electrolytes. And hyponatremia, the symptoms look very much like dehydration, and they can be quite debilitating. A lot of times, a lot of people will confuse the symptoms and say, wow, I'm feeling dehydrated, but I've been drinking a lot of water. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe the heat, maybe the work. Maybe I need to drink more water. So what I recommend that everybody keep in your kits, and this is part of I keep some in my first aid kit, I keep some in my food kit, I keep some in my water kit, electrolytes. Now, this is not a product endorsement. These are the ones that my son likes while he's in wrestling season. So I just grab these from the shelf. But having some sort of electrolytes is very important. In fact, if you can't afford these, you can make your own from simple items that you probably already have at home. If you're not sure which ones to get, go to the baby section and get the individual packages of electrolytes for babies. There's a whole lot of electrolyte products out on the market. Get some. The better ones contain sodium. They contain potassium. Some of them may contain magnesium. A lot of them will contain sugar, and the sugar is not the important part. That's just for flavor. But if flavor is important to you, particularly if you're boiling water, because boiled water tastes like crap, having a flavored electrolyte package is a smart thing. Okay, that's just at a bare minimum. Understand that if you have issues with if you have metabolic issues, you may need food to stay healthy. If you have issues with sugar, you may need food to stay healthy. At the very least, having things to stave off those conditions, which I'm sure if that's a problem of yours, you're already familiar with what you should have, whether it's hard candy or crackers or whatever it is that's important. That's certainly an important thing. But to be able to perform optimally, having at least some food might be an important thing. Something like these hiking rations might be worthwhile. Now, these particular ones will require water to make. There's a whole lot of other things, such as MREs, that you do not require water for. And if you want to leave something perhaps in a get-home bag that's living in your car, something like boating rations may be a good thing. So this stuff that you see here, as you'll notice, if you put it all side by side, takes up very little space. It's not a huge footprint. Combined with whatever EDC items you might have in your pockets, you have a lot of tools with which to affect your survival. Beyond this stuff, which this stuff really is what I consider to be the backbone of any survival kit. Beyond this stuff, perhaps some sort of communications devices, whether it's a ham radio or a GPS or one of the GPS that could send out the signal, the emergency signals, or even your cell phone. A communication device is important. If your communication device is your cell phone, having some sort of way of recharging it might be a smart item to keep in your kit. So communications, and then beyond that, perhaps navigation. I already mentioned the GPS, but if there's a major power situation, or if there's cloud coverage, or if you're in the middle of the city, there's a whole lot of times that a GPS may not be optimal, so perhaps having a compass and a map maybe At a bare minimum, if you're going to be using a compass, the compass is more important than the map usually. But the combination of the compass and the map, it'll damn near get you most places that you need to go. Okay, so that's a good approach, and those are good redundancies for that. Now, I promised you guys that I was going to give you a useful tool. This is something I learned, or I was first exposed to by the late James Yeager, and this is a very smart approach to developing kits. Take your items that you plan on putting in your kit, put them together, get a rough idea of how much space you're going to take, and then get your bag to accommodate those items. Maybe slightly bigger so that you can add future items. Okay, this is important because what I've noticed in myself and in our students and in our training family, if you get a kit, if you get a bag with the intention of turning that into a kit, you're going to fill every nook and cranny. Okay, and that's going to make a huge difference because weight counts. Okay, that old backpacking adage that ounces equal pounds and pounds equals pain is very, very real. You want to go as light as possible, whenever possible, right? If you're not using some sort of a conveyance, whether it's a car, an ATV, or a horse or something, your kit really needs to be ultimately as light as possible. And if this is something that you're carrying just in case that you really have no intention of using, but it's there in case of the worst case scenario, you're not going to carry something that's particularly heavy. Okay? You're going to at some point come to the thought that I've never used it, I've carried it, it's cumbersome, I'm going to leave it behind. And Murphy's Law dictates that's more than likely when you're going to need it. So keep it as light as possible so that it's available to you. So I'm going to close out by reminding you of the two questions that we ask ourselves when we're developing kits or when we're in a survival situation. What's most likely to kill me now, and what's going to kill me next? Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you like what you saw, if you found value in it, I would really appreciate it if you hit that like button. And if you share it with your friends, that'd be great. So hit the share if you'd like. If you're not already following us, please do. That way you can stay abreast of our uploads. And of course, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, drop them down below. Look through the descriptions because I very often will add links that I find useful. I'm going to add links to the things that you see here. I'm going to add links to other videos that you might find useful as well. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, guys, be well. Take care.